Greetings, beautiful Earthlings, and welcome to Intro to Tarot, Week 2, Oracle Decks. You guys might remember that last week we talked about basically what tarot deck is and why one might bring tarot into their life and begin working on divinity. So this week I had promised to talk a little bit more about oracle decks and what the difference was between tarot decks and oracle decks. So one thing that I wanted to touch on, we had mentioned last week that most of the tarot decks these days are sort of at least loosely based on the Rider-Waite tarot as far as the houses and what all of the numbers mean, what all of the different major arcana cards generally in most in their strongest sense stand for, and that's pretty much universe through all tarot decks. There are certain exceptions. I wanted to kind of bring in an example. So my favorite deck to ever work from, second to the one that we talked about last week, which was also tarot, the herbal tarot, is the Akashic tarot deck. This is a different type deck in that Sharon and Klinger and Sandra and Taylor have chosen their own different houses. It's, see if I can remember this, keys, forces, roses, and the fourth one will come to me. So it's similar to Rider-Waite and most other tarot decks in that it has 4 houses and it also has a major arcana and a minor arcana. The major arcana cards in this deck are actually really, really cool. But this deck actually happens to have 62 cards, whereas most traditional tarot decks have 78. So that was another difference I kind of wanted to point out. Even though Sharon Ann and Sandra Ann call their deck a tarot, it's not necessarily Rider-Waite traditional. This, I mean, honestly, your energetic intention and knowing what it is that you're trying to get out of the read, for example, or, you know, the spread, it really, I mean, you could use anything. You could use a deck of playing cards if you know what the assignments to the cards are. Some people use charms that they pull out of a bag. So it's all about kind of like, first of all, what calls to you, you know, most of all, what speaks to you, which ones you feel called to kind of work with, shuffle. We can talk about the stock of the cards and how that kind of comes in, shuffling and flying cards and just tapping into your intuition in general, because that can be really fun as well. That's something along with reversals, reversed meanings, and adjacent meanings that we're going to kind of talk about next week, because going forward, once we all understand the main differences between tarot and oracle, then we can kind of just speak about doing divinity with cards, and I'll just kind of use the blanket term of tarot, even though it'll be talking about oracle cards as well. Because, for example, one of the decks that I brought over to talk about as an oracle deck calls itself a yoga wisdom cards deck. I would call it an oracle deck because it kind of falls underneath my umbrella definition of what I particularly use oracle decks for. And of course, my explanation of this is going to be different from any other tarotistas. It's like a Venn diagram. You've got some, you know, characteristics that are mostly just tarot, some characteristics that are mostly just oracle, and then a lot of gray area. You can really use them for both. Looks like we're going to have a co-host today. She's working up the courage to jump up here, and she's my #1 co-pilot, bossy girl, my little kitty, my witchy black cat. She's my #1 co-pilot with my reads and with my cards. I had mentioned last week that the animals really love the cards, and I oftentimes will just, if I'm doing especially oracle, and I know we haven't even gotten into, you know, the difference, but when I'm choosing my daily oracle card, a lot of times I will let her choose the card. So I'll spread the cards out in front of her, and then she'll stretch maybe her paw, and then inevitably it'll touch one card. And you know, it's always the best message. Is your best message? You give me the best messages. I'm shooting a video, so try to behave. So getting into really the differences between oracle and tarot. So a lot of people will use oracle decks for daily pulls of only single cards, sort of as like a message for the day. A lot of other people will tell you that's not the major difference, and that oracle decks tend to be less ominous than tarot. Different types of connotations. Some people consider tarot a lot more like occult-ish than they do oracle, especially because a lot of angel decks are called like oracle decks and not tarot. So you'll find a lot of oracle decks that are considered like angel cards, but on the other hand, I mean, this is a perfectly good example of an archangel tarot deck. So you'll find it all. That's what's amazing about it. Oh no, we have a cat gonna jump up where I have okay, he was the lighter of the two cats, so you just may have gotten a little bit seasick as Hunter jumped up. So now we have all of the cats here for your oracle deck lesson today. I've brought over the yoga wisdom cards, or I'll call it the yoga oracle deck, as well as Monology, which is my favorite oracle deck. It also has a lot of this proverbial Venn diagram gray area because it speaks to different phases of the moon very similarly to how it has how the Rider-Waite tarot deck has different houses. Additionally, it has a pseudo major arcana speaking to all of the new moons, and this is with the astrology in mind. Excuse me. So Hunter and I have decided we're going to do one, and this is a method that you guys can use once you have multiple decks as well, is that we're going to do an oracle deck pull for the collective conscious once again this week. This is going to be sort of a bigger message because this is going to be a message for the new year. So I've decided to go with the Monology first to bring a message through. And this is a really good example of how you can use oracle decks. You tend to get a little bit more of a holistic message from a single oracle card than you might in a tarot deck, just designed a little bit differently. And a lot of times the tarot decks are designed to play off of one another numerically, whereas some oracle decks won't really speak to the numbers as much. Okay, so here's our new year message from Monology. This is beautiful. New moon in Cancer. You and your loved ones are safe. Who doesn't want to hear that message coming through? You and your loved ones are safe. New moon in Cancer is our message for the collective conscious. This brings up a lot of existential questions and a lot of just questions about like, who are your loved ones? For example, all of you are my loved ones. So knowing that we are safe as a collective, that's beautiful. That's what everybody is trying to hear right now. You know, that's the message that we're trying to hear, is that we're safe at the end of the day. Root chakra, you are home wherever you are because you're safe. So interesting. So moving on to the yoga wisdom cards, or the yoga oracle deck. This is a fun way once you acquire your second deck, or maybe if you have like a tarot deck and an oracle deck, to get support from one deck to another, or just to kind of have fun to see if one message that comes through is similar to another, they're completely different. If you only have one deck, you can take the bottom card as a support card, or just the second card. Whatever it is that you initiate with your energetic intention as you're shuffling, which we talked about in the video last week about how important it is to know who you're connecting to while you're shuffling, understand what you're trying to get out of the read. So this is our support card slash message for the collective conscious, message for the new year. Ooh, beautiful. My gosh. Okay, so these do kind of go hand in hand. So we pulled frog, cleansing, and both of the booklets for both of these oracle decks are awesome. I highly recommend both of these decks, by the way. So the frog pose, this is a really nice stretch. This is not too of a crazy stretch by yoga standards, so a lot of folks can get themselves into something like this, or a modified version. Again, this is a water type sign or a water type pose. it promotes a lot of fluidity. This is a very extremely grounding yoga pose, one of the most grounding yoga poses there are. And you're just sitting there stretching out that groin, low back, thighs like a frog. It's a safety kind of position. You're grounded, you know, you're very close to the ground, you're safe. So a lot of water themes here, a lot of grounding themes, lower chakras, red and orange. This tends to be the theme these last couple of months. So beautiful oracle messages coming through for the collective conscious for this year. You and your loved ones are safe. Grounding water energy of the frog. Amphibious, land and sea. Very versatile. Boston wants to be a part of the party. This is a good sign. We don't always get so much harmony between these two cats. So I hope that that helped everybody understand a little bit what the difference is between Oracle and Tarot. I'll continue to be touching on the differences throughout this series. I mentioned next week we're going to be talking a little bit more about different spreads and how to shuffle flying cards, what they mean, reverses, reversals. I'm very excited to share all of this knowledge with you guys because it's helping me learn more because I'm having to do my research and make sure I've got my facts right. Two kitties love you guys. My kitties love you guys. I love you guys. I hope that you have the most beautiful week ever, and I'll see you guys on Friday for Feel Good Friday.